What is up, guys? Randall here from Wired and bringing you another video. So excuse me for this setup because I bought a house and I made the basement a studio, but didn't plan for the echo, so still kind of working on that. So gonna go with the dynamic mic for now, so there's not too much of an issue. May still be, but whatever. So in today's video, I wanted to talk a little bit about my experience building a hardline water-cooled build, or this is really like my second fully custom loop. I built it like a year ago or maybe 2 years ago, but I wanted to talk about my experience because the experience I feel has lasted me a lot longer than just a year, right? So first, let me go over the specs. Well, first, the build itself is hardline tubing, but this time I went with metal, chrome tubing, to be exact, copper tubing, but chromed. I went with the tubing like this and used the fittings that I used instead of getting bends because that became a little too complicated. It was really pricey for the 90-degree bends. If I wanted to do it myself, I would have to bend the copper, then send them out to be chromed, or go to a hardware store that may or may not do it, or an automobile shop. Or body shop. So I went with just using the Fantex fittings, which I'm using in this build. But let me go over the specs quick. I went with the AMD 3900X Gigabyte Aorus motherboard, the 570. I have an 970 EVO NVMe SSD in there. I have 32 gigabytes of Trident Z RAM, the one that's specific for AMD. I also have an NVidia GeForce RTX 2080, EK water blocks for both the CPU and the GPU block, EK water block radiators as well, more on that later, that's a whole another situation, and Seasonic 1200 watt titanium power supply. Actually, I have a Gigabyte NVMe as well, so I have two NVMEs in there, not in RAID or anything. I'm actually using one as a dump drive for editing videos because it's a lot easier and quicker to edit off the NVMe as opposed to putting it on my network for now until I upgrade to 10 gigabit, but that's a whole nother discussion. But anyway, I wanted to talk about my story per se, or my situation. First of all, the build itself this time, I really took my time. I wanted to make sure that I was extremely meticulous in not just the way I put together the structure itself, like the loop itself, but the way I did the cable management. So I actually, from the start, crimped and made my own sleeving cable with MDPC-X sleeving, $1 million piece, MDPC-X sleeving, $1 million PC sleeving, and some Tealios, I forget the name, I'll put it in the description, I forget how to pronounce it rather, but it's another really good sleeving company, so I kind of mixed the two and worked with the two depending on the application. Like some of the power supply cables, I decided to go with MDPC-X, and some of the other ones, I decided to go with the other brand because I felt like the threading was a little more flexible and a little more to my liking as opposed to the MDPC-X, because they both have a very different vibe. The MDPC-X is more rigid, it's more plasticky feeling, while the other one is more material feeling. But anyway, I actually went and crimped these cables myself so I would have more control over not really the colors, and not even the cable splitters, the knuckles, like the chrome ones that I have here, the metal ones that I have here, but I wanted to just have more control over the routing experience. And as you can see from even the back end of my PC, which I'll show you right now, I drilled into the Fantex case to clip the cables and route them properly to make it really neat even in the back. Anyway, this is my first time on AMD as opposed to Intel, and I have to say my experience has been very mixed. I know I'm jumping around a little bit. I wanted this to be more of a stream of consciousness. I didn't really plan this out, but what I mean by that is the chip, I know, the 3900X, I know is supposed to run hot, but if you have this experience with chips that run hot, you'll know what I'm talking about. It seems as if it's sluggish, even though it's hovering around 70 when overclocked, mildly overclocked, or even running the autopilot overclock. it's running sluggish, and a lot of the times that has to do with the temperatures, even though the chip is supposed to run hot. What do I mean by that? Well, I had a very similar situation with my Intel 7700K before I delidded it. Delidded, it's probably not a word, but you know what I mean. I delidded it, and when I did, that sounds so ridiculous, delidded it. When I delid it, I got it down to like 25 to 35 under extreme loads, extreme overclock. I had that chip up to like 5.3, I think. It was ridiculous, where I got a really good chip. But it was really low in temperature, but only when I delid the CPU did the performance increase, and the computer and the PC and the games and everything else that I used it for felt smoother and felt like it responded better. Only after those temperatures dropped. Even though before I did that and used the liquid metal, before I took the lid off, it was sluggish, even though it was only hovering around 60 degrees, 70 degrees. Now that could be because that chip was not supposed to run hot, but I'm having the same issues with this AMD chip for almost 2 years now. So the chip runs to like 70, 80 with a mild overclock, and I'll just get really sluggish performance. Whether I'm editing a video or whether I'm playing a game, I'll get these weird performance hitches. Outside of that, I really wish I took a different approach to how I did the water cooling loop. And what do I mean by that? So I went with a third-party reservoir, as you can see, mounted to the back of the PC here. And I went with the DC pump, which you see here. But even though it's advertised as being completely quiet, it does have a higher noise. It does have a higher noise floor than the regular, mount that you would use. What is it, the D5 or whatever it is? I'm sure somebody out there could correct me. That pump was truly quiet. This one has a little noise to it, but when doing the hard line, when doing the copper line, I had to use so many fittings, it became super expensive. But then I ran into situations where I just couldn't make turns even with the fittings, so I had to use a soft tube, as you see here. Now that could be because of the limitations of the case. The case is not that big. It looks pretty cool. It looks like I almost did it intentionally, but that kind of bummed me out a little bit. And to mix like a clear tube, like if I was to bend the PETG tubing or whatever, I don't think it would look as good as it does now with the black silicone or whatever material they use. Outside of that, and the big reason I'm making this video is because I want people to truly test out their equipment before they put their water cooling build together. I went with the Quiet Silent Wing 3 fans, which was supposed to be totally quiet, and they are not attached to a radiator. But on my EK radiator, because I have a 360 in here and a 240, it makes a horrific whining sound when the RPM of the fans is over 1,000 or over 800, basically over 50%. Now, I thought it was because it was maybe rubbing against something in the case or something like that. No, it's the sound of the air pushing through the radiators. It's like bugged out. I don't even know. So after putting this entire build together, I'm still running with this issue, because to take everything out and to replace these fans just because of a noise when they perform fine is just a lot to do. I mean, I'll wind up doing it probably, but test out your stuff before putting everything together, because little issues, like nothing ever goes smoothly, right? Nothing ever goes just like the way you want it to, right? So make sure you test everything out, because you can run into some issues like this, and trying to search or trying to look from other people's experiences or learn from their experiences isn't always the best way to go about it, because your chances are you're going to come across something that no one else has come across. So that was really frustrating, and I have to work on that. But overall, I think it's definitely a great learning experience going with the hardline tubes, especially with getting creative, not being able to bend the tubes, right? So with the PETG tubing, you can bend it, obviously save on fittings, but make really cool designs and things of that nature. And I learned that from my last build. I could do that pretty good, not great, but I could do that pretty good. But not having that flexibility really makes you think and be more exact in the way you put your loop together because of those turns you can't make, and the limiting factor of having X amount of fittings and not being able to use particular fittings. So I had to throw in a lot of 45 degrees, a lot of 90 degrees. I mean, the build winds up looking great, but as you can see, I had to make a lot of different turns. I did go with the black mayhem fluid, the black pastel mayhem fluid, which you see, which I thought added a great effect to it. But if I was to go back, I probably would go maybe with a different color, I think, to add a little bit of an effect to the set, additional effect to the setup. One thing I will say though is I don't know if they've changed since then, but stay the hell away from Primo Chill fluid. I originally had one of their fluids and in my last build, and it completely demolished everything. I had to tear everything down and clean it out because the coloring and the fluids separated, so it formed solids in the loop that I had to flush out and clean the blocks out and everything. And now I use that PC for work. But stay away from that. Just stay with Mayhems, and you know, go with whatever is guaranteed to run and function properly in your setup over time, as opposed to something that's only supposed to be temporary. Even though I know, yes, the pastel is, you know, technically just for showing your PC, but it's been known to work flawlessly in builds for, you know, X amount of time. So yeah, so that's about it. I just wanted this video to be like a quick stream of consciousness update on this particular build that you've been seeing in the background. This isn't like a full-fledged review. I'll be doing that on some of these components in the near future. First though, I'm doing a review on another keyboard. Then it's going to be best 5 tech under 50. I'm going to throw this in the build log playlist so I can keep you updated on what I've learned. If you know something that I don't about any of these components or the fans and how they're working with that radiator, maybe something I'm missing, please pop into the comment section and let me know. I'm still learning with you all too, just trying to share my mistakes. Maybe you could take something from this video. If you like the video, do me a favor, hit the like button. It really helps me out. Subscribe if it's your first time here. And if you didn't like it, feel free to hit the dislike button, but do me a favor. Tell me why you don't like it in the comment section. Otherwise, you're just being ridiculous, because I can't make anything better if you don't tell me why you don't like it, right? You know, come on. Come on. Tell me. The one dislike guy just won't tell me. The one guy who disliked the last one won't let me know why. It's killing me. It's killing me. All right. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.